The steel door slammed so hard that it shook the whole hallway. The guard's voice echoed through the empty space as he shouted, "Inmate Walker, step away from the window." But the man inside the tiny cell did not move. Instead, he kept staring at the strange hole he had scratched into the wall, something no one had ever dared to do in ADX Florence, the most secure prison in America, known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Dust covered his hands. His fingers were bleeding. And on the floor, next to his feet, lay the small metal bolt he had secretly taken from the leg of his bed 6 months earlier. He had shaped it into a sharp tool, something deadly. Something impossible to get inside this place. Somehow he had done it. Then the wall made a low cracking sound. A sound that should never come from a supermax cell made of reinforced concrete. The guard froze. Walker froze. And for 1 second the whole prison seemed to stop breathing. The crack grew bigger. The wall started to break. No one understood how, no one even believed it could happen. Not here. Not in ADX Florence. A place built to never fail. The guard yelled again, but before he could finish, a deep rumbling noise echoed like thunder under the floor. Then everything happened at once. The wall split open. A cold burst of dusty air rushed out. And behind the crumbling concrete, Walker saw something so shocking, so impossible that his heart almost stopped. It was a dark tunnel. A tunnel that wasn't supposed to exist. Before the guard could call for backup, Walker turned toward him with wild eyes and whispered, "You have no idea what's under this place." And that was when the alarms exploded across the entire prison. Red lights flashed. Metal doors locked. Dozens of guards rushed in with shields raised. But they were too late. Because in that moment, Walker stepped backward into the shadow of the tunnel. And vanished. Leaving the guards standing there, stunned, staring into the darkness. But the biggest question remained. Who built the tunnel, and how long had it been there? Now the story begins. Years before this moment, Walker was just another inmate sent to ADX Florence after a bank robbery in Chicago went wrong. People said the prison would break him just like it broke almost everyone else. No human contact. No freedom. Only silence and steel. At first, Walker tried to follow the rules. He stayed quiet, kept to himself, and stayed away from trouble. The days felt the same, slow and heavy, like time refused to move. He spent hours staring at the small patch of sky he could see through the narrow window high above his head. But then he started to notice things. Strange noises at night. A distant tapping sound behind the walls. Footsteps where no guards walked. Sometimes the lights flickered even when there was no power issue. He asked other inmates during recreation time, but no one ever answered. Most were too scared to talk. Some refused to look him in the eye. One prisoner, an older man named Harris, whispered to him once, "This place has secrets. Deep secrets. Don't go looking for them." But Walker was stubborn. And curious. Dangerously curious. One morning he found a loose bolt on the frame of his bed. The metal was old and worn. He took it quietly, hiding it inside his shoe. With that tiny piece he began scratching at the wall every night. Just small marks at first. Nothing that would draw attention. But then something strange happened. The deeper he scratched, the softer the concrete felt. Almost like something had weakened it from the other side. And then came the day of the earthquake tremor. A quick shake the news later said was nothing serious. But in Walker's cell, it made a thin crack appear on the wall exactly where he had been digging. That was when he knew something was hidden. Something big. He worked faster after that, careful but determined. Weeks passed. Then months. Soon the small crack widened. He could feel cold air coming from behind the wall. Until finally, on that day, the day everything shattered, the wall collapsed completely. And Walker discovered the tunnel. But as he stepped inside it, something worse was already waiting for him. Because just before he disappeared into the darkness, he heard a voice echo up the tunnel. A voice he recognized. A voice of someone who should have been dead. And that was when the floor beneath him began to shake again. The shaking grew stronger as Walker tried to steady himself in the dark tunnel. Dust fell from the ceiling, covering his hair and clothes. The voice he thought he heard still echoed in his head. It sounded like Harris, the older inmate who warned him not to look for the prison's secrets. But Harris was gone. He had died 2 years ago. The guard said it was a heart attack, but every inmate knew the story never felt right. Walker moved deeper into the tunnel, his hands brushing against the rough walls. It was cold, much colder than his cell. The air smelled old, like something from a long time ago. The only light came from the small crack in the wall behind him. Ahead was pure darkness. He took a slow step forward. Then another. The ground was uneven. Some parts felt like concrete, others like dirt. He wondered who dug this place. A prisoner? A guard? Someone from years before the prison was built? The tunnel suddenly widened. Walker could now stand fully straight. He touched the wall and felt something strange, carvings, letters, words scratched into the stone. He squinted and tried to read them. There is no way out. Another line said, "Turn back before they find you." Walker's heart beat faster. He ran his fingers over the carved letters again just to be sure they were real. They were deep, meaning whoever wrote them probably spent months making them. But what scared him more was how many carvings there were. Dozens, maybe hundreds. All warnings. Footsteps echoed far behind him. Walker froze. It wasn't the guard from before. These steps were slower, heavier, like someone walking carefully, trying not to be heard. Walker's breath caught in his chest. Someone else was in the tunnel. He stepped back quietly, trying not to make noise. But his foot pressed against something and it rolled away. He reached down and picked it up. It was a metal tag. He wiped the dust off and squinted at the writing. It was an ADX inmate ID tag. Harris's name was on it. Walker dropped it and stumbled back. Harris, down here? There was no way. Unless he never died. Unless the guards lied. Unless Harris had been taken somewhere deep under the prison. The footsteps grew louder. Walker turned and started moving deeper into the tunnel. He didn't run. Running would make too much noise, but he walked fast, his heart pounding with every step. Soon he saw another faint light ahead. A warm orange glow. Firelight. As he got closer, he could see the flames flickering through a small opening. It looked like a room, a hidden chamber carved under the prison. He leaned in carefully and peeked inside. What he saw made his stomach twist. 3 prisoners sat around a fire, but they were not wearing ADX uniforms. These uniforms were old, faded, like they came from decades ago. Their hair was messy. Their eyes looked wild, like they hadn't seen sunlight in years. And on the ground beside them was a map of the prison tunnels. But the real shock was the face of the 4th man sitting with them. It was Harris. Alive. Older. Thinner. But alive. Before Walker could move away, Harris turned his head sharply toward the opening, his eyes widening as they met Walker's. "Don't run," Harris whispered. "They know you're down here now." Walker stepped back, but just then, a loud crack came from behind him. The tunnel ceiling began to collapse. And a huge piece of rock broke loose, dropping straight toward him,